The admissions terminal was never supposed to glow purple. In my 20 cycles as station coordinator, I had seen green for approved, yellow for delayed, red for denied. Purple was not a status. Purple was a system response reserved for errors so severe that the algorithm itself did not know how to proceed. And yet there it was, blinking 3 times in red, then settling into that impossible shade. I leaned closer, my secondary eyes sharpening, focus while my primary pair stubbornly refused to accept the data scrolling. Across the display, species human, combat aptitude tier 9, threat classification alpha predator. My claws tightened against the console. Coordinator Krell, my assistant Vina, peered through the doorway. Her neck frills fluttered in mild concern, a soft turquoise that meant alert but not alarmed. You have been motionless for 11 minutes, she said gently. Medical believes you may have entered a stress-induced stasis. I swallowed and gestured weakly at the screen. Vina, tell me what you see. Read it slowly. She stepped beside me. Her scales shifted from curious green to shocked orange as the text registered. Combat conditioning score. Off the measurement scale, she read. Reaction speed 98th percentile among known predator species. She hesitated. Assigned cohort. Basic orientation group 12. Her frills collapsed flat. Krell, she whispered. Group 12 is for civilians. Support species. We have a plebeian floral arranger in that group who faints when doors close too loudly. I pulled up the intake summary, my claws clicking faster now. It gets worse, I said. According to this, the human arrived on a cultural exchange visa. Vina stared. Occupation listed as humanitarian aid worker, medical volunteer. The silence stretched. The algorithm saw the keywords, I muttered. Aid medical humanitarian. It auto-classified her as low-threat civilian. Vina looked back at the biometric data. But these numbers are horrifying, I finished. Yes. Bone density triple the predicted human average. Muscle fiber composition flagged as military-grade enhanced. Neural response latency that rivaled apex predators bred for war. And I added quietly. She completed intake screening while being, and I quote, exceptionally polite and apologetic for the inconvenience. Vina's frills twitched in existential distress. What do we do? She asked. Group 12 begins combat fundamentals training in 40 minutes. Instructor Brix will be teaching them how to safely hold a training rod. I stood, tail sweeping the floor in agitation. We observe, I decided. No intervention yet. If this is an algorithmic calibration error, it will reveal itself quickly. And if it isn't? I exhaled slowly. Then we pray nothing goes wrong. 38 minutes later, dread settled deep in my core as I stood in the observation deck overlooking Training Hall 5. Below, 18 recruits from across the galaxy gathered in nervous clusters. The plebeian was easy to spot, petal head trembling, trying desperately to remain invisible. 3 Quillics stood pressed together, rabbit-like ears flicking at every sound. 2 Matharian scholars clutched datapads like talismans. And then there was the human. She stood slightly apart, calm, hands clasped behind her back. Still. Her name tag read Dakota Reeves. Average height for her species. Brown skin, dark hair pulled back tightly. Standard gray training attire, yet on her, it looked less like exercise clothing and more like a containment measure. She was smiling. It was small, gentle, friendly. It made my scales itch. The hall doors opened with a thunderous clang. Instructor Brix entered. At nearly 3 meters tall, his Gorlan frame filled the doorway. Stone-like hide scarred from decades of combat. A presence that made even hardened recruits shrink instinctively. Several participants flinched. Dakota did not. If anything, her eyes brightened with interest. Welcome to Combat Fundamentals, Brix growled, voice echoing through the chamber. Most of you have never considered violence beyond theory. That ends here. He paced heavy footsteps. Fear rippled through the group. You will learn awareness. You will learn defense. And by the end of this course, you will be capable of holding a basic weapon without injuring yourself. Dakota listened like a student at a lecture she genuinely respected. Brix stopped at the equipment rack and lifted a padded rod. This is not a weapon, he said. It is a training aid, safe, balanced, simple. He turned his gaze on the recruits. You will not swing it. You will not spar. You will not improvise. Understood? Weak affirmatives followed. Retrieve equipment. Single file. As the line shuffled forward, anxiety ruled every step. Dakota waited at the back. When her turn came, Brix handed her a rod and froze. It was subtle, a microsecond pause, but I saw it. Recognition. Dakota accepted the rod. Her grip was perfect, not practiced, not careful, instinctive. Thumb alignment precise, tension optimal, balance point centered without adjustment. She held it like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "Thank you, instructor," she said warmly. Brix said nothing, but his eyes never left her. From the observation deck, my blood ran cold. This was no calibration error. This was something far more dangerous. And Group 12 had no idea what had just walked into their classroom. "Instructor." Brix did not comment on the human's grip. That silence was more unsettling than shouting. He moved to the center of the hall and demonstrated the basic stance, feet apart, knees flexed, rod angled defensively across the torso. It was the most fundamental posture in galactic combat doctrine, designed for beings who had never considered using force in their lives. The recruits tried. It went exactly as expected. One Quillix held the rod backward. Another gripped it so tightly his forelimbs shook. The plebeian managed to tangle himself in the padding and apologized to the equipment. Dakota Reeves stood motionless, already perfect. She did not copy Brix's stance, she settled into it, her weight distributing naturally, micro-adjustments rippling through her posture like a system calibrating itself. No stiffness, no hesitation. She waited. Brix moved through the line, correcting errors. "No, loosen your grip. You are not strangling prey. Feet wider. You will fall over. Stop apologizing to the equipment." Then he reached Dakota. He stopped. For several heartbeats he said nothing, just watched. "You?" he finally rumbled. "Human." "Yes, instructor?" "Where did you learn to hold a combat implement?" Dakota tilted her head slightly as if considering how much honesty was appropriate. "I have worked in unstable regions," she replied evenly. "Basic self-defense training was required." "Basic," Brix repeated, unimpressed. "Yes." Brix leaned closer, rocky face inches from hers. "Your stance is correct. Your grip pressure is optimal. Your balance is centered for immediate movement in any direction." He straightened. "Basic training does not produce that." Dakota's smile softened apologetically. "My instructors were very thorough. They prioritized safety." Several recruits glanced between them nervously. Brix grunted and moved on, but I noticed something chilling. He kept looking back at her. The lesson progressed. Foot placement, guard transitions, controlled movement. The civilian struggled, learning through stumbles and embarrassment. Dakota flowed. She transitioned between positions without thinking. Every motion economical. She adjusted angles before imbalance occurred. She corrected mistakes unconsciously, then caught herself and froze, reminding herself she was not here to teach. She was restraining herself. That realization tightened something unpleasant in my chest. After 40 minutes, Brix halted the session. "One final drill," he announced. "Observational only." The recruit stiffened. "I will approach each of you, slowly. You will maintain your stance. You will not attack. You will not flee." Standard intimidation assessment. Most civilians failed within seconds. Brix started with the Quillix. They scattered immediately. The plebeian fainted outright. Medical staff rushed in. Dakota watched calmly, concern flickering briefly across her face, not fear. Assessment. Then Brix approached her. She did not move. He closed the distance. 2 meters. 1. Half a meter. His presence radiated controlled aggression, the kind honed through real battle, meant to trigger primal fear responses. Dakota's breathing never changed. Her eyes tracked him, not with hostility, not with defiance, but with focused clarity. She was not bracing for impact. She was ready. Brix stopped mere centimeters from her rod. Silence swallowed the hall. "You are not afraid," he observed quietly. "I understand this is a training exercise," Dakota replied. "You have not indicated hostile intent. And if I had?" She smiled faintly. "Then I would reassess my response appropriately." The words were polite. The implication was terrifying. Brix stared at her for 3 heartbeats, then stepped back. Dismissed. The recruits scattered in relief. Dakota carefully returned her rod, nodded respectfully to Brix, and exited with smooth, controlled movements. Brix remained standing. Then he looked up, directly at me, and made a Gorland gesture that translated roughly to, "We need to talk now." 5 minutes later, Brix sat across from me in my office. "That human," he said without preamble, "is not a civilian." Vina stood by the door, frills flickering nervously. "Her documentation," I began. "Is incomplete," Brix interrupted, "or deliberately misleading." He leaned forward. "I have trained soldiers for 3 decades. That woman has extensive close-quarters combat conditioning. Not theoretical, not academic operational. Could humans simply— No." His voice was absolute. "Natural talent does not erase fear. Training does." I pulled up Dakota's file again. Humanitarian credentials, medical certifications, diplomatic clearance, nothing military. "She moves like someone who has survived," Brix continued. "Someone who has been attacked and learned what works. What do you recommend?" "Immediate reassignment. Advanced combat cohort. Before someone startles her." "And if that happens?" Brix's expression darkened. "I have seen trained fighters accidentally injure civilians. The guilt destroys them. The institution never recovers." I nodded slowly. "I will contact the Human Coalition." The response arrived faster than I expected. "Classification error acknowledged. Full dossier attached. Handle with discretion." My blood temperature dropped as I opened it. Dakota Reeves, former Earth Alliance Special Operations. 12 years active service. Multiple commendations. Retired. Now pursuing humanitarian work. We had placed a predator among prey and called it cultural exchange. Tomorrow was going to be complicated. The emergency meeting convened at first light cycle. That alone told me how serious the situation had become. Station Director Morphix occupied the head of the long crystalline table, her faceted body refracting light into sharp, restless patterns, a visible sign of irritation. To her right sat Instructor Brix, massive arms folded, expression carved from stone. To her left, 3 representatives from the Human Coalition, diplomatic corps worthy, weary faces of people who already knew this. Conversation would be unpleasant. And at the far end of the table sat Dakota Reeves, calm, composed, hands folded neatly in front of her, not restrained, not guarded, waiting. "Let me summarize," Director Morphix began, voice harmonizing with restrained displeasure. Miss Reeves submitted accurate documentation. Her background check was completed, and yet she was assigned to a civilian. Training cohort unsuitable for her capabilities. She turned her gaze to me. "Coordinator Krell, explain." "The intake algorithm prioritizes current occupation keywords," I said carefully. "Humanitarian, medical, aid worker." These triggered low-threat civilian classification. "The algorithm," Morphix repeated slowly, "ignored the section labeled prior military service." Silence pressed down on the room. One of the human diplomats, Ambassador Foster, cleared his throat. "Our personnel files follow Earth formatting standards," he said tiredly. "Military service is listed chronologically under employment history. Your system appears to scan only the most recent role," Brix rumbled. "Understandable does not mean acceptable." He leaned forward. "You placed a Tier 9 predator among beings who panic at raised voices." Dakota raised one hand slightly. "May I speak?" Morphix gestured permission. "I apologize for the confusion," Dakota said. "I assumed the program began with baseline training for everyone." "Many organizations do. You thought we teach everyone how to hold a stick?" Brix asked incredulously. "Yes," Dakota replied calmly. "Consistency prevents bad habits." Foster nodded. "Director, Miss Reeves specifically requested this program because she is transitioning away from combat roles. She is still dangerous," Brix said flatly. Dakota turned to him. "I am capable," she corrected. "There is a difference." Morphix activated the holographic projector. A busy station marketplace appeared above the table. "Scenario," the director said. "You are walking here. A cargo container falls behind you. Loud noise, sudden movement. What do you do?" Dakota didn't hesitate. "I step laterally out of the fall path, turn toward the sound, assess injuries, check for secondary hazards. If someone is hurt, I assist." "You do not assume attack?" Brix asked. "Because it isn't one." The scenario shifted. 2 beings shouting. Physical shoving. "I create distance and contact station security," Dakota said. "Monitor escalation. Do not intervene unless there is imminent serious harm. And if there is, Morphix asked. Dakota's expression hardened, not aggressive, but focused. Minimum force. Verbal commands first. Physical intervention only to prevent injury. Proportional. Controlled. Silence followed. She answers instantly, Morphix observed. No deliberation. Because I've trained for emergencies, Dakota replied. Would you prefer hesitation? No one answered. Dakota leaned forward slightly. With respect, this feels less like safety and more like discomfort. You are uneasy, because I am competent without being aggressive, because I do not fit your expectations. The words landed hard. I came here in good faith, she continued. I want to learn. I want to help. Being effective should not be treated as a liability. Venus spoke up from the corner, frills glowing thoughtfully. What if she isn't the problem? All eyes turned. Group 12 is terrified of conflict, Venus said. They associate strength with harm. But Miss Reeves demonstrates something different. Control, compassion, capability without cruelty. She turned to Morphix. She could be a stabilizing presence, a mentor. Brix considered this, rumbling softly. The flower arranger nearly fainted again yesterday, he admitted. But he watched her remain calm. It helped. Dakota nodded. I am trained to de-escalate, she said. Teaching civilians how to feel safe is part of that. Morphix rotated her facets slowly. Miss Reeves, would you accept modified placement? Peer mentor. Teaching role. Enhanced oversight. Yes, Dakota replied immediately. That is far more useful than pretending ignorance. A ripple of surprised amusement passed through the room. Very well, Morphix decided. Group 12 will be adjusted. Instructor Brix retains authority. Documentation will reflect the change. She fixed Dakota with a firm gaze. If at any point your instincts override judgment, you withdraw and report immediately. Dakota nodded solemnly. I take that responsibility seriously. The meeting adjourned. As we walked toward the transit corridor, I spoke quietly. Miss Reeves, thank you for your patience. I understand caution, she replied. I would rather be questioned than ignored. May I ask why this program? She paused. Because I spent years being the solution. When things went wrong, she said softly, now I want to learn how to exist where things don't. That answer stayed with me long after she boarded the transport. 2 weeks later, I stood once again in the observation deck above Training Hall 5. This time my stomach did not churn with dread. Below, Group 12 moved with purpose. Not precision yet, but confidence. Thornweave, the plebeian floral arranger who had once collapsed at sudden noises, now stood upright, clutching his training rod with careful determination. His petals still trembled when startled, but he no longer fled. Dakota had spent hours with him, teaching controlled breathing and explaining that fear was not failure, it was information. The Quillix trio no longer clustered in panic. They moved independently now, darting and repositioning with surprising agility. Dakota had reframed their small size as an advantage. Speed, awareness, escape routes. Even the Metherian scholars had changed. Combat training, once viewed as barbaric, had become a study in applied environmental response. They took notes. They asked questions. They adapted. And Dakota Reeves? She laughed. That alone told me everything. The tension I had seen in her during that first session, the constant restraint, the careful suppression of instinct had softened. She still moved with discipline, but no longer with isolation. She was part of the group now, not hovering above it. Brix joined me on the deck, massive arms resting on the railing. She's good, he admitted. Better than half my instructors. Any incidents? I asked. None, he huffed softly. She stopped 3 panic spirals before they started, corrected equipment misuse without humiliating anyone, and somehow convinced Thornweave he could complete an obstacle course. That might be her greatest achievement. Brix watched below as Dakota crouched to adjust a Quillix trainee's foot placement, guiding gently, explaining patiently. The Quillix tried again, held position, and squeaked in triumph. Dakota gave an encouraging nod. She actually cares, Brix said quietly. I thought she might be bored, slumming with civilians. I was wrong.
Humans often surprise us, I replied.
Their capacity for violence is matched by their capacity for restraint. Terrifying species, Brix muttered. Fortunately, I said, they chose to be our allies. Below, Dakota glanced up at the observation window and waved. Not a salute. Not a gesture of deference. Just a friendly acknowledgement. I waved back. Group 12 graduated 6 weeks later. They set a station record for basic orientation performance. Thornweave transferred into station safety inspection. The Quillix trio launched a self-defense program for smaller species. The Matharian scholars published a paper on cross-species threat response theory. Dakota Reeves continued through the cultural exchange program. She later joined the diplomatic corps, not as a soldier, not as a guard, but as a specialist in humanitarian operations within conflict zones. She trained relief workers across multiple sectors, teaching them awareness, calm, and the difference between strength and aggression. The galaxy was better for her presence. I keep her file on my desk now, not as a warning, as a reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous beings are the ones who choose kindness, not because they are weak, but because they know exactly what they are capable of. And sometimes the worst paperwork errors lead to the best outcomes. You just have to be brave enough not to fix them too quickly.